It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the fin side. Inside. It ain't the left side.
Thank you, Solo D. Welcome to another episode of On the Fin Side. Here with Kat and Paul Pickin. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, Spreaker, and on YouTube. And before training camp kicks off here in a couple of weeks, Paul and I are going to break down and grade the Miami Dolphins roster position by position in detail. We'd love to know your thoughts as well on our social media outlets, and you can reach us on there. And Paul, there's no more fitting place to begin than the quarterback position that every Dolphins fan seems to have an opinion on, and rightfully so. You know, you've got Ryan Tannehill here, gosh, entering his sixth year. I mean, I heard that he was going into his sixth year from somewhere, and I thought, he's not going into his sixth. Holy shit, yeah, he is going into his sixth year. So we're going to start there. I'll start out with my opinion on Tannehill, is that every year I do the same thing right about this time when looking at the Dolphins quarterback situation. I just number the paper from 1 to 32, and I write down where I think each quarterback belongs and which slot they do. So I have 14 quarterbacks clearly above Ryan Tannehill, and they're Rodgers, Brady, Ryan, Breeze, Carr, Luck, Prescott, Cousins, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, Ben Roethlisberger, Marcus Mariota, Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton. And then Tannehill, to me, is between 15 and 20 with a lot of other quarterbacks like an Alex Smith. I have Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Carson Palmer, Eli Manning. But he is on my list rated higher than he was last year for the Dolphins heading into the season. Paul, where do you stand? How do you feel about Tannehill right now compared to maybe last year?
I mean, for me, I think you know this. I think our regular listeners know this. Going into last season, I did see him somewhere in the upper middle of the pack. And looking at it for me going into this year, I see even more reasons to be positive, so long as his knee's in the shape that we keep hearing it is. He's definitely, to me, somewhere in that 10 to 12 range right now going into the season. He's got the ability and the weapons around him to go even higher on that ranking, because there are a couple of guys in there that you mentioned as clear-cut being above him, and I don't know that I'd say a guy like Mariota is clear-cut above him. This may not be a popular one because I know he's the darling of Geico commercials and all kinds of stuff out there. I think Andrew Luck is a guy that started out on fire in the league and kind of trickled and fizzled a little and has actually descended in the rankings a little bit. I mean, there are some guys that maybe you rank above him, maybe you don't. And for me, I'd really put him in that 10 to 12 range with that possibility given his surrounding cast, given the possibility that the guard situation does pan out the way the Dolphins think it will. He really could be that top 10 quarterback potentially. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Brady. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Rodgers. But you look at some of his increased stats and some of the deeper dive stats that folks have put together on him, like Pro Football Focus, he's throwing a great deep ball, something that we said for a little while before they caught up to it, but you saw players dropping the hell out of it and no longer doing so. A lot of different things here. There's really that potential for him to take that next step this year in an even better way than he did last year.
I would take Mariota and Luck over Ryan Tannehill if I were making the choice, but even then, it's not by a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I think, or at least it's not a landslide. I think Andrew Luck, a credit to him, especially last year, the Colts go 8-8, and in my opinion, it was a terrible, terrible football team that the Indianapolis Colts had, and Andrew Luck took them kicking and screaming to an 8-8 record. Mariota last year, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, not quite the gunslinger, had a good offensive line, had a good running game. But I stick on those two guys because of the 14 quarterbacks that I mentioned earlier, the interesting thing is 8 of those 14 quarterbacks are in the NFC. 3 of those quarterbacks in the AFC are 35 or older, and that's Brady, Rivers, and Roethlisberger. And then after that, you've got Derek Carr, you've got Marcus Mariota, and Andrew Luck in the AFC as your young guys that Tannehill has to compete with, to me, long-term to go deep into the playoffs with the Dolphins. Those are the 3 guys I'm really looking at. But taking a look at Tannehill this year and how I look at him, I think what you're seeing out of him and you're continuing to see out of him is incremental growth. And I've said this for years that I don't think Tannehill, I never expected him to take that leap into superstardom. But I did expect him to get better and better and better. And I think he was really on that track last year with Adam Gase. In the final 8 games, Ryan Tannehill, after Ajayi broke out, Ryan Tannehill was throwing the ball, completed over 71% of his passes, had 1,723 yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, over 100 quarterback rating, and a 7-1 record. So I think as long as the Dolphins keep that balance on offense, you could see Ryan Tannehill continue to grow, especially with Adam Gase.
Yeah, and one thing that's going to be really interesting to see this coming season, given the fact that he is coming back from that knee injury, is how much we're going to see Ryan Tannehill, A, run with the ball, B, if he does run the ball, how aggressive will he be in doing so, and C, how aggressive will Adam Gase be in allowing Tannehill to run the ball. I know there's a lot of Matt Moore fans that listen to the show. I know we talked about this before. I know he's a hell of a guy. But he showed what's great about Matt Moore and what's terrible about Matt Moore when he came in after that Ryan Tannehill knee injury last season. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see how much both Gase and Tannehill bring Ryan's legs into a game. Because when Tannehill is running with the ball, it really sets those defenses off balance, makes them have to spy him, gets his wide receiver core open, and really could be interesting down the line if they're able to keep his legs involved in the game based upon his recovery from the knee injury.
It's interesting with Tannehill and running the ball because part of me says once or twice a game, I'd like for him to do that bootleg because it keeps defenses so honest. If you've got Ajayi in the backfield and you've got Tannehill who can possibly just tuck the ball down and run 15 or 20 yards because he has the speed to do it, I think that's a huge weapon. On the other hand, I know exactly what's going to happen if Tannehill does that, gets hurt on it, and is out for 6 weeks. People are going to be saying, well, why are you putting your quarterback in that position? So it's interesting, but I think it's worth the risk because of what it can bring to your offense.
One thing I want to look back at while we're talking about this is Donovan McNabb early in his career wasn't the best passer, but he incorporated his legs into the game. As his career went on, even while he was still up in Philly, he got away from running the ball. It was a conscious decision, something he put out in the media for whatever reason that he decided to do so because he didn't want to be remembered as a running quarterback. And it really just destroyed what there was of his game, in my opinion. So that's something where, like we were just talking about, I don't want to see it decrease Ryan Tannehill's game by getting away from it just because he had that knee injury this past year. So I hope they do still incorporate it. But like you said, it's got to be sparingly and where it makes sense and be something that is used as a wrinkle, not an every down weapon.
And Adam Gase has really challenged Ryan Tannehill this year to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And I think what you're going to start to see for the Dolphins on offense is Ryan Tannehill that, hey, look, you've got Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, Jay Ajayi, and Julius Thomas. You have 5 guys who should be able to win some matchups out there. And because of that, you better get the ball out of your hands quickly. And I think that's going to be the challenge for Tannehill this year. One thing that I want to see him do on third down over the last 2 years, the Dolphins have been 25th and 26th in third down completion percentage. I'd like to see Miami have a few less 3-and-outs. Moving on to Matt Moore, Paul, a player that we have always disagreed on. I think every year we're talking about Matt Moore. I always want him on the team. I think he's a good asset. I'm not going to say rooting for him to be cut, but pretty darn close to it. Because here's where I stand on Matt Moore. I feel that you look at last year, Ryan Tannehill goes down. Matt Moore comes in, and against Arizona, it's a tie football game. Matt Moore completes a pass to Kenny Stills, gets in field goal range, and then in overtime, He completes a deep pass to Kenny Stills. The Dolphins end up winning. Then the following 2 games against the Jets and Bills, score 34 points a game, win those 2 games. Dolphins end up going to the playoffs. Then in the final 2 games against the Patriots and Steelers, that gunslinger mentality you talk about really got the best out of him. But I got to say, I think very few quarterbacks in this league can step off the bench and do what Matt Moore did last year.
I do tend to agree with you to an extent. I mean, like I said before, I think Matt Moore, what we saw last year was a microcosm of what is great about Matt Moore and what is utterly terrible about Matt Moore. I'd actually love to see Matt Moore stay with the team, but I'd love to see him go into that assistant quarterback coach style of role. I'm hoping that, given the fact that Doughty was on the practice squad last year, he's had that time to develop. I liked a little bit of what I saw from him during the preseason last year, and granted it wasn't all against the top-tier defenses, but if he's had time to develop and is able to be even as good as Matt Moore in this preseason, or a little bit steadier than Matt Moore, because Matt Moore is going to give you those wow plays in a great way, and he's going to give you those wow plays in a terrible way, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick used to do with the Texans, just like a number of those mediocre gunslinger quarterbacks have done with various teams out there in the past. I think Moore is a great mentor for Ryan Tannehill, but it's gone on too long that Miami hasn't been able to find a good young backup to Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And
he costs too much.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there too. And I'm glad that finally Matt Moore, after basically not throwing a ball for 4 years and getting paid $13 to $15 million over that span not to do it, that he actually got in and was able to justify his value and get the Dolphins into the playoffs. One thing that we've definitely agreed on is I love drafting a quarterback in those middle rounds, stockpiling picks, drafting a quarterback in those middle rounds. I know before the draft, you and I were talking about Josh Dobbs out of Tennessee. If he's available in the 4th or 5th round, maybe that's somebody the Dolphins take a look at. They didn't have a 4th round pick, but if they could have manufactured one, then I just think that the upside is so big if you can hit on that. You look at Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott. Yeah, most of the time you're going to whiff on these picks, but if you hit on them, you're paying somebody a very small amount of money to either be a really good backup or somebody who can potentially nudge your starting quarterback a little bit. And then you've got really the best of both worlds. So I hope the Dolphins in the upcoming year draft a quarterback in the middle rounds, and not to unseat Tannehill necessarily, but to at least have a really good backup for Matt Moore, who does cost a few million and is 33 years old. Paul, looking at the rest of the depth chart, you see Brandon Doughty, who the Dolphins drafted in the 7th round last year, did end up making the roster. It's someone Adam Gase does think highly of, who could be that long-term backup. And you've also got David Fales, a former 6th round pick from the Chicago Bears, whose NFL resume is 5 NFL passes. So do you think the Dolphins keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks this year?
I think Miami's still going to look at it as 2. I know Doughty still has practice squad eligibility, so if he doesn't beat out Matt Moore, then I think it's a scenario where he could end up getting stashed on the practice squad again. I believe Fales has practice squad availability or eligibility, and you can keep me honest here on that. So you may see one of those 2 guys end up on that practice squad. Some of that's going to depend upon what we see from Tannehill in the preseason and his ability to hold up early on in testing out that knee in game situations. They don't have to make that decision given the new rule changes now, where essentially there is one cut during the preseason, and that's the cut from 90 to 53. I mean, they're going to have the luxury of being able to take a good long look at these young quarterbacks without having to essentially sacrifice at another position to do so. So that's one of the good sides of the new rule changes is you're going to see Fales and Doughty on that roster right up until the cut day, not a cut day, the cut day.
I'm with you. And this is, make no mistake about it, this is an important preseason, an important training camp for Brandon Doughty, because I think Adam Gase is going to decide Is this somebody who can be Ryan Tannehill's backup? You're talking about a quarterback. They thought enough to draft. They thought enough to keep him as a third quarterback. And 97 touchdowns his last 2 years at Western Kentucky. But me personally, I've never really seen the arm strength in him. I hope that the Dolphins do keep two quarterbacks on the roster, take that extra roster spot and use it on another position. I don't see David Fales really having a chance to make the roster. Paul, so taking a look at it, the position in its entirety, how would you grade the Dolphins quarterback spot?
I'd have to go with probably a B+. I want to say A-. I like Tannehill's prospects for this year. I'm a little leery about the knee situation, and it's almost getting upsetting at this point that they really haven't been spending any draft capital to try to unseat Matt Moore at that backup quarterback position. He's not getting any younger, and it's a scenario that they have to address, and it can take 3 or 4 picks to come up with a decent backup in those mid to late rounds. You just have to hit on one, but you have to do it periodically to keep your team honest and to make sure you've got that young talent. At worst, you get a good player. He can't unseat Tannehill. You can do what the Patriots do every few years and trade that for other draft capital that's a little bit higher of a pick. So I have to go with that, but part of that is the fact that they haven't been able to find anybody to even challenge Matt Moore.
Yeah, you say B+. I'm going to say B. I'll give him a solid B. I'd like to see Tannehill be better on third down this year and the offense be better in general. But I think you are seeing that incremental growth. I think he's been better at moving his feet. I think his deep ball was better. I'm going to go with a B as well. Also, coming up in our upcoming episodes, we are going to move on to the next position in our next episode. It's going to be the running back spot that we feel a lot differently about this year than we did last year. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Spreaker, and on YouTube. This is Kat and Paul Picken on the Fin side, and if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin side. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the Fin side. Inside. It ain't the left side or the right side, and it must be the Fin side. Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what Brian Cat and